That's where the
bullet hit.
shots.
Cut this guy's house, right?
Good evening and welcome to a Wednesday, February 22nd Board of Selectmen meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's easy for you to say.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have one item, which is a public hearing on Article 4, amending the tax cap. Article 4 reads, "Shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5B and amend the tax cap whereby the Budget Committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes based on the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised by no more than 5% rather than the existing $175,000. Estimated 2023 tax rate impact is 0 cents. We presented this at deliberative. Ms. Kleiner did a wonderful presentation on it. This evening, for those who may have missed deliberative or would like a recap, we're going to go over some of the slides. Ms. Kleiner.
Thank you. So, we did present it at deliberative, and some of the background information, which we thought was important, and sometimes this gets a little bit lost when we're thinking about the tax cap, is the tax cap is only on the estimated amount of local taxes to be raised. So during the budget sessions, we had a lot of conversation with the budget committee on this. With the tax cap, it puts a limit on the amount that you can raise in local taxes. That is impacted by more than just your budget. That is also impacted by the amount of revenue that a town receives. It's the veterans credit and the overlay. Those are all impacts to that amount. So if you suddenly have a drop in revenue, and when you're thinking revenue, that can be state revenue, it could be grants that you receive, that's going to already put the town at a loss for the amount of budget that they can increase. So a lot of times we feel that's lost when we talk about the tax cap, and that is a little bit of why we're so concerned going forward. Not necessarily just the inflation that we're all seeing, and we are, right? You have the inflation that you're seeing on the local budget, but we're also hearing from NHMA and some of the fiscal experts to be very conservative when you start to budget the revenue for the coming years. And that is normal. It's normal to see when you are in, and no one wants to use the R word, the recession word, but when you are in tough economic times, what you generally see is more increased need for services by the municipality, right? Because the residents, you may have more people that need the welfare assistance, or you may have more residents that actually reach out to the town for services. You see decrease in revenues like your meals and taxes, rooms and tax and meals. You see decrease in motor vehicles because people aren't going out and spending high amounts on vehicles. So that directly impacts our revenue and decreases our revenue. And then we get hit with the inflationary costs. So it really is very tough for a municipality during these type of economic times. So a little bit on the history, and we felt this was important because many people may not know this. So back in 2016, it was placed on the warrant. And the original warrant article was at 5.5%. It was amended on the floor at the deliberative to an amount no more than $175,000. But looking at the actual tax levy then, that $175,000 was 4.9%. So it wasn't the 5.5 that was originally proposed. Now it's at the flat amount, and that ends up getting approved actually on the 2017 warrant, and went into effect for 2018 budget. The important part on this slide is all the way to the right-hand side where we're showing the percent of the tax levy cap, the cap has had on the tax levy. So you see the 4.9 way back when it was adopted in 2017, but now that $175,000 is only 3.63%. So while you're having a fixed amount, you are actually lowering the percentage that the town can increase its services. And this is happening, which is kind of like a even harder pill to swallow for the town when this is happening. So this is the consumer price index for urban consumers. It's what most municipalities that have tax caps look at to determine what the cost of services is doing over a period of time. In 2017, when you originally placed or approved the tax cap, it was 2.1%. Now, and this has been updated for we just got December's final number, which is showing a little bit of positive movement, although they're saying that it's not being reflected in costs that consumers are seeing, the actual prices they're paying. Now you're seeing 8%. So as the tax cap, that 175,000 fixed amount has actually decreased in percent, the cost of inflation has actually increased. And that's the constraint that you're seeing upon the municipal budget. What's also important, I think, is people are hearing 5%. And it does. It sounds like a large amount. It isn't. So if we look at the operating budget, if approved this year, at the 7.7 million, and we look at the current tax cap at 3.39%, you're talking about 5.1. At 5%, you're talking about 5.2, which is only a difference of a little under $75,000. So we realize that the 5% may sound large, but it isn't a large amount of money. And if you look at our professional services contracts and the rate of inflation, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to need to keep level services. We're not talking about anything new. And that's why, we thought it was so important to bring it forward this year, is the Budget Committee did an excellent job, made some really tough cuts. Those cuts just aren't there next year. And if you're going to come in under $175,000, you're going to make some impacts to the Litchfield residents.
The other point to note is, if inflation does go down over time, nothing says we have to get to the 5%. That's just the maximum we can go to between us and the Budget Committee. So, if at time it might be 1% over. But what it does is it allows that ceiling to be a little bit higher that we can go to in times that we need to.
And I think that was brought up at deliberative.
I believe Chairman Sun brought that up also.
Right. Absolutely. There's nothing that says it has to, and, you have many levels of review. So there's we put together finance and I and the department heads put together the budget. We look at things before we even bring it forth to you. And then you review and you go through it with each department heads, and there's things that you find there, and then it's brought forth to the budget committee. So it's heavily reviewed and analyzed. And I think what we've seen, and I'll show you, in this slide, here's our municipal tax rate. So over time, the town has done a remarkable job keeping its tax rate low. If the 2023 operating budget and all the town warrants, which we don't know, pass, it'll be $14.14, $14.14, still below the 2017 tax rate. So, and I think if you look back, and one of the things that I did was go back and watch those old budget committee meetings. I think you have seen very good questions asked, some really hard decisions and some really hard cuts. But I think that everyone is very, very sensitive to the fact that we need to keep that low. There's a lot of talk now, and I think the chair is going to share an email received about what does the current economic conditions mean to the residents, right? So the same inflation that we're feeling, we know that our residents are feeling that. And that was one of the reasons that this year the board chose not to bring warrant articles forward that would increase the tax rate. And I think we've been very successful. So here's just an illustration on the increase for 2023. The town, if everything passed, you're talking 16 cents. On a house assessed at $400,000, that's $64 a year. But what the residents are hearing is down below. If the school operating budget passes at $1.22, that's $488 on that $400,000 house. And then they have one warrant article that has a tax impact of 41 cents. That's an additional 174. So that's 652 on the school side. So we certainly understand the residents' concern, but I don't think it's on the town municipal budget. And not that we're not saying we shouldn't educate our kids, but, you know, it's only the town that has the tax cap.
Correct.
And that's all I have, except that this is the last slide. We ended with that deliberative, and we hope that everyone will vote. And I know we hope that people consider we don't want to impact services
The
for
town
the
side is
resident.
doing well.
Yeah.
It's the school side, it's always been the worst side.
Do we have any comments or anything before we open it to public input?
Read it, I'm looking something up. I had spoken with Karen White a while back about the past 4 years of the tax impacts on the town side and on the school side, not counting union contracts, which for the town is the police, and the school, they have two unions, the sports staff and the teachers, but everything else outside of that, and it was quite a disparity between the two. The amount of money that the school has spent in the tax impact versus the town. I think we've done a great job keeping our budget as low as possible while providing good services to the residents. I don't see it on the other side, but Again, it's not a competition, but I don't think that people's anger should be warranted at the town. I think we've done a great job, and every year we've gone before the budget committee, they've given us praise. This is probably the first year that there was any kind of pushback from the budget committee because we were over the tax cap, but we had no choice.
Yeah.
We were dealt a hand that we were already over it with just the utilities and the contracts. Put us over the tax cap right out of the gate. I think we've done a great job, and I hope the voters will support this.
In the slide that Ms. Klein has showed from 2017 to 2022 actually backs that up, what the rate per thousand has been. From the town side, we've
Yeah.
gone down almost $1, I think it was.
Yeah, it's, that is,
Yeah, 432
That's
down to
remarkable.
398, so, 34 cents.
I mean, in 2020, you had a reval, and so everything gets reassessed and it gets recalculated. But still, if you look at many municipalities, especially across southern New Hampshire, who have really been hit, being so close to the border, you have a hit to that inflation. You don't see very often this type of hold on the budget, and this is really some really good budgeting and choosing of priorities. Now, one of the things that we are trying to do more this year is look at grants, right? So there's grants out there, and we're trying to take advantage of those to take some of the impact off of our residents, and we'll continue to do that. But there are some services that you won't have grant opportunities for.
Correct. And in with all those numbers, we have to think also, we did a telecommunication upgrade, and we have a new fire station. So we had two large projects within
And
that
the other
rate.
thing too, we're making some investments this year in equipment, which should have a positive impact, at least on maintenance,
Correct.
in the coming years. For instance, the new fire truck is going to, it better help the maintenance budget. Because we're not gonna have, and our highway department is in pretty good shape with respect to that. We're gonna have a new backhoe.
Yep.
Which is gonna help us as far as.
Highway and solid waste.
Yes. So those types of things will have a positive impact. It'd be interesting if you took those 6 years, from 17 to 22 and then 23, and posted using the 2017 as the base year, and graph a line graph showing where we went from 432 to 466 to 480 to 392 to 381 to 398. So a line graph, and then do the same thing for the school district, using the 2017 as the base year, and see that to compare the two. All right. I'm a great believer in visuals, and a picture sometimes it tells you a lot.
Do we have any?
Do many towns have a tax cap in New Hampshire? What's the percentage? I don't know. I mean, is there a
So-
lot, or are we a few of towns that do that?
So there's several different versions. So SB2 towns are the towns that can only have a fixed amount or a fixed percentage. Others, and it is quite common, and there are more coming on every day. There are cities that operate under a charter that have what they call a spending cap, right? So, which may be a little bit easier for some residents to understand, right? You're looking at the actual increase in the spending. That's not the tax cap is. And then you have several of the large municipalities that also have tax caps that are calculated a little differently. They may include what they call an increase in building. So if they're seeing an increase in their assessments for the town, they can actually take that in the year that they're calculating. We don't have that option.
Do you think we're being successful in Litchfield because we do have a cap? I don't know if towns who don't have a cap, if they can just do whatever they want. I mean, that's part of our success here, because we've had that cap.
Oh, I think so.
Okay, so it's worth keeping, that's my question, I just wanted to make sure. All right, and SB2, what's the definition of that? What's for, no, but what's the, you said certain towns have the fixed percent. What's the criteria to be SB? Oh, you're talking Senate Bill too.
Right.
Is that, okay, that was another question I had, was there something coming up in the, right, Senate, you said, about the, we're not the only town in this situation. It sounds like there's a bill, maybe.
So they're doing some research into, is there a different way for SB2 towns? There's been some SB2 towns that have actually, besides us, that have been actually looking at why can't we use some sort of economic factor, like the CPIU, right? So that it adjusts. There's no bill currently in front. There is a bill currently in front of the legislature on default budgets.
Yes, yes. What's interesting is that we make a big deal, rightly so, about the tax cap. What we're forgetting is the default budget is if our budget fails, we go back to the default budget, which is higher than the tax cap. So, but there is legislation that is going to supposedly correct that anomaly. Now, in years past, the school district budget, the default budget, has been higher than the operating budget. This year, the default budget is lower than the operating budget, which is the way it should. Ours is higher.
Higher, yep.
It's because of the formula they use to calculate that default budget. So there's legislation that would tweak that formula. And I'm somewhat aware of it. I don't know the details, but hopefully it'll massage that a little bit.
So I was just hearing, it's about the default budget that's
The
going on, not
legislation
about the
right now.
cap, like certain towns have a cap. I
Right.
didn't know if there was something going on with that.
No, and I think one of the reasons why you see the default being actually higher this year is because there's some really solid cuts in our operating budget, and quite honestly, some that really hurt that you generally don't see, and some of that was the constraint of the cap. So as we looked at that, and as we look at just keeping level services, still fighting an increase in cost to as much as we can, that's where we kind of came up with that 5%, especially for at least what's needed going into 2024.
And it's in line with the percentage back in 2017. All right, do we have any other comment before we open up the public input?
Now, I know talking to Steve Perry, who was on the board when that came in, and he said the idea behind it was not to cripple the town. It was just to control the spending, but it was never intended to hurt us to the point where we can't provide the services that we're supposed to provide.
And to be a fixed rate that was never looked at again.
Yes,
It was supposed
correct.
to be something that you were constantly looking at.
He said it was a working number.
Yep.
It's meant to be a working number, so.
Okay, any other comments? All right, hearing none, we'll open it up to public input in favor or opposition to amending the tax cap. Seeing we have nobody here, we did get one piece of correspondence, which I will read. It says, "I am strongly against the change to the tax cap change. I feel Litchfield needs to live within the rules in place which are there to protect the public from large tax increase. In a year with high inflation and families struggling with inflation, the last thing they need is to have larger tax bills cutting into limited funds. Thank you, Michael and Devin Weidner, 40 Tanager Way, Litchfield, New Hampshire." Seeing we have no other input, we'll close public input. There's nothing else on the agenda this evening other than letting you know that voting will occur at Campbell High School, March 14th, 2023. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. Also, the next Board of Selectmen meeting is Monday, February 27th, 2023.
So if everything on the town side passes, you said the taxes will go up how much?
16 cents.
How much?
16.
Well, how many dollars is that based on
On a $400,000 home, $64.
$464 of everything on the town side?
No,
$64
$64.
on a
Yeah.
$400,000 home.
I was gonna say, we need to revisit that. So $64 on a $400,000 home.
Correct. Which is roughly just over $5.
And if everything passes on the school side, it will go up roughly $652.
So,
So
We've done a homework.
we're 10%.
I say that as in response to this letter. I don't think that the town is spending money at a rate that's gonna cause the large tax increases.
Correct.
Okay, $64 versus $682 or whatever.
Yep.
So-
And we do understand this high inflation, families are struggling, and that directly impacts our budget also in order to give the services that we need.
Correct. And, so if everything passed if you have a $400,000 house, your taxes are gonna increase $716. Only 8.9% of that is the town.
Mm-hmm.
91%.
That's the total between the school and the town. And that town is only gonna be, what, 64, what you said, or 54?
Yep.
Right.
And we have to run police,
Yep.
fire,
Highway.
highway, recreation. When you look at the services, solid waste, the services we give, I mean, $64.
You have to pay our salary.
Yeah.
And, there's some costs coming up, in 2024 and moving forward that we don't have any control over, and they're required. Stormwater is one
Stormwater's
that
a big one.
immediately comes to mind, right? You're going to be getting ready for a new permit. There's going to be increased oversight. That's just one, and you have absolutely no control over what you have to do to maintain that permit.
Correct.
They tell you.
And if inflation truly hits, I mean, room and meal tax are gonna go down, so that's a revenue hit for us. Highway block grant, which is tied into the taxes on gasoline,
Yeah.
that will directly impact us, so there's revenue that could also go down moving forward.
We
So-
rely on that a lot.
We really do. I mean, that's $500,000 in revenue, the two combined.
There's a state website, the state does an excellent job of posting, their financials. And we're all watching it, I mean, all of us, local are watching to see what's coming in. So far, we haven't seen much of a dip, but, you don't know what fall is going to bring. And it could be that we start to see those decreases in revenue, with costs, even if they stayed stable at this level, you're still gonna have quite a hit to the fiscal 24.
Okay, with nothing else on the agenda, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Mr. LaSalle's,
Second.
second by Ms. Queen, and all in favor, Mr. Larry.
I am an aye, and I'd like to say happy birthday to Chairman Son of the Budget Committee.
Yes, happy birthday, Mr. Sun. So we have a motion, we have a second.
And an aye.
Aye, Mr. LaSalle's.
Aye.
Mr. Lynch.
Aye.
Ms. Queenan.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 500. Thank you for tuning in, and everyone be well.